How to make any boring conversation flirty with a woman. If women friend zone you, they feel very comfortable around you, but there's not a lot of attraction because they don't want to meet you for a date or you miss out on second dates, at least with the ones you really want to be with, that one woman you want to maybe marry at some point. This video is for you. Today you're going to learn extremely practical pieces of advice on how to build a man-to-woman connection on a first, second, or third date, as well as crucial mindsets you have to succeed to create and sustain attraction. Here are 6 super important mindsets for first, second, and future date success. Number 1, it's okay to make things flirty. You're a man, you have a desire for intimacy. That's not only okay, but it's the basic operating mechanism by which humanity procreates. Flirting is the precursor to the existence of future humans. It's perfectly okay. Do it. Live it. It's life. Number 2, women want you to make things flirtatious. Society implies that all forms of intimacy are something a woman gives and a man takes, which is absolute nonsense. It is a mutual exchange. Women have a much stronger desire for verbal as well as physical intimacy than we're led to believe. It awakens their feminine energy at their core. It makes them feel alive. Number 3, if you don't make things flirtatious, women will lose interest in you. It is not optional for you to create a man-to-woman connection. You have to do it. Otherwise, your interactions with women won't go any further than platonic, politically correct nonsense. And after 90 minutes of a BS date, she'll shake your hand and she'll give you the greatest insult known to man, which was, "It was nice to meet you." Or you'll just never hear from her again. Or she'll tell you she didn't feel the spark. Or even worse, 2 months later on social media, you'll see photos of her with another man. 4, you're always as flirty as she wants you to be, which simply means you're calibrated. You read her signals, you make sure she's comfortable at all times. 5, enjoy the tension that it creates. I remember when things ended with my ex-wife and I started getting out there again, I felt really strange about this sexual tension. I had no problem being nice to women, making them feel comfortable, but this man-to-woman thing felt really weird. Even being able to hold eye contact was something that I didn't truly feel comfortable with. The only thing you have to understand is, yes, there's technique, yes, there's process, but also it's like doing bench press or any other new exercise in the gym you've never done before. Once you do it for a couple of weeks, you'll get used to it. It's like interlocking your fingers. Interlock your fingers. Do it with me for a second. You interlock them like this. And now you switch one position and you lock in. Feels a bit weird. It doesn't sit quite right. Now go back to normal. That's normal. There's no right or wrong. It's just as right. It's just a habit. We as human beings, especially as men, we define ourselves by our limitations. I'm just not that kind of guy. I'm just shy. I'm a little bit more introvert. I'm just too logical. When have you defined yourself? You have to understand that all change ultimately occurs with a shift of identity. How do I define myself? And I refuse to identify myself as anything that takes power away from me. Do not buy into limiting beliefs. Obviously, you can argue there's limiting beliefs we carry that are unconscious, that we aren't aware of. We question everything except for the things we truly believe, those we just believe. But as much as you can, refuse to buy into anything that takes competence as well as confidence away from you. Number 6, own it. Zero insecurity. This is a super powerful mindset and principle that applies to all areas of dating and life. Confidence, yes, comes from a competence. It comes from what we believe about ourselves. It comes from spending time with other confident men. And it ultimately comes from managing our own mental and emotional state. But it is also just a decision. You can decide to just not allow insecurity anymore. Most men are so loyal to their suffering, as Jack Kornfield says. You have just identified yourself as somebody who tolerates insecurity as an experience of existence. Refuse to do that. Verbal ways to make things flirtatious. Number 1, misinterpretation. Misinterpreting what she says can be an extremely powerful tool to make things a little bit more flirtatious, because the onus on the implied level of sexuality is on her, because you're misinterpreting what she said, and it came from her. Now, before I give you the good examples, I want to give you some bad examples that I got from ChatGPT. ChatGPT and AI is amazing for a lot of things, but not for dating. It's PC nonsense. I'm giving you these not just to increase watch time retention on YouTube, but really so you know what you must not do. Because a lot of these, as I looked at them, a lot of these guys actually use them and they're not good. So number 1 is She says, I'm really good at cooking pasta. And then you go, is that an invitation for dinner? Just say the time and the place and I'm there. That's called premature escalation. It's not good because it's too much too soon. Number 2, she mentions, I need to find a good book to read. And you say, trying to find a book as interesting as our conversations? Cringe as never say that. Next one, she mentions when she says, I keep losing my keys all the time. Misinterpretation? Is that your subtle way of asking me to come over and help you find them? Cringe, right? Yeah. Cringe as hell. But ChatGPT actually suggests this. This is why mainstream dating advice keeps you single and helps you end up in relationships with women who are gonna make your life a living hell. Next one. She says, it's so chilly outside. Misinterpretation. Sounds like you need someone to keep you warm. Any volunteers? Oh. Next one. She talks about having a busy week. I've had such a hectic week at work. Misinterpretation. So you're saying we should go for a relaxing weekend getaway? Again, it puts pressure on her and it's cringe. You can't just do that. Let me give you a couple of really good examples, practical examples that actually work. Remember, I've done this with hundreds of clients from 30 plus countries. Help them find the right girlfriend, life partner, wife, get a better social life as well as high quality male friends. This is actually tested and true. Good examples. She used to take care of old people, for example, right? If she did that, then, and she were to say, she tells you her story and she goes, I just really love old people. Then you can say, hey, it's cool, we all have some daddy issues. But see, it's different. I've never told her that. I didn't tell her that because I wanted a somewhat authentic reaction. In fairness, you could say Fernanda's a little bit biased, which I hope she would be, but this is a much better one. Another one is she plays football and she goes, I just love the feeling of kicking the ball and hitting it perfectly, which is actually something somebody would say who plays football. Then you can say, I'm sure you do. Instead of just saying, oh, you like balls, you make the premise obvious. Instead of that, you can just say, I'm sure you do. It's implied, it's subtle, it's way more smooth. Next one, she says her dinner portion was too small. So you can say, so size does matter? And then you just go like this. Or she goes, sun protection. And she talks about sun protection. And she says, I had these weird stains on my skin because it didn't absorb it properly. And then you can say, yeah, I get that. I also feel a bit uncomfortable when I have white stains left, especially around this area. Jesus Christ. But these are obviously specific examples. And I want you, I'm not sure why I'm putting this away. There's a lot more golden stuff in here that I need in a minute. I want you to be able to make them up spontaneously at the same time you need some structure. Feel free to steal those, but I hope you understood what's cringe and what isn't. The second way to create a man-to-woman connection verbally to make things more flirtatious is compliments. There's 2 mistakes you have to avoid, too many and too generic. The best ones are spontaneously tailored. I'm gonna give you a couple of ones here that seem spontaneous that you can still steal. Obviously, the best communication is the one that happens organically on the date, but that is a skill set that takes some time to develop. So when you're on a date in 2 weeks with a woman that you're really not trying to impress, but you really want to put your best foot forward, you want to give it the best chance of success, it's good to have some structure to be able to fall back on. The first one is you have the cutest facial expressions when you're trying to explain something. The next one, I really like your posture. You have great energy. Do you go to the gym?
Yeah.
So that's not just all good genetics?
No.
I was more referring to the lower part of her body, but gains. All right, very good, very good. And I think it's awesome that you work out regularly. Most people are too lazy for that. That's a compliment that isn't necessarily flirtatious. But if I were to say that, I was like, hey, because I genuinely said that to Fernanda, because she goes to the gym regularly most of the time. I said, I really think it's awesome that you work out so much. Most people are just too lazy. That's a good compliment to receive, right?
Yeah.
It's very tailored, and there's a little bit of a provocative statement, as in, most people are too lazy for it, which is actually just a fact. Another one is, I like your makeup. Women are not that hesitant, more confident. I really like your makeup. Most women have no idea how to use it. Or they just use way too much. A friend of mine, actually, he went home with a girl 2 months ago, and it looked like she took in the bed the next morning because of all the fake tan and the makeup. Not saying you have to use this one, but it's a possibility. Obviously, just don't tell any stories that aren't true. Or she tells a joke, and then you just say, you're actually kind of funny.
I am funny.
I am funny. The push-pull. I'm saying kind of funny. What is she going to focus on? Obviously, the kind of. Number 3, teases. Teasing is an amazing way to lighten up the mood and to imply a sense of pre-existing relationship. Because if you don't tease one another, the implication is that you can't know each other that well yet, because the people that you do know well, you do make fun of each other a little bit in a warm, loving way. By the way, men who are bad for you, quality male friends or low quality male friends, and women who are bad for you, people who are bad for you, they're gonna make fun of you with the intent to hurt you. Intent really matters. You can make fun of each other all day long as it's in a loving and uplifting way. But if you tease one another, it implicitly means you must already know each other for quite some time. Otherwise, you wouldn't be doing this. Now, they have to happen somewhat organically. Just never tease her for something physical, something she cannot change. Tease her for something she just said or something she just did in a cute, funny, and silly way. And she does the same to you, obviously, and you have to be able to take a joke. Just always make sure that it comes with warm intent as you do it. Number 4, push-pull. Women can get away with cringy dad jokes, by the way, where the premise is too obvious. You are actually kind of funny, my baby. If a man were to do that, now look, you can make dad jokes or jokes that aren't funny on a date. Chances are it's gonna happen to you at some point. If I were to do that, again, she can build physical contact on a date whenever she wants to. You got to be a little bit more calibrated. But if I were to do that, and she'd be like, then you can actually laugh about it, or you can calibrate it with, haha, such a dad joke, I know. Haha, such a dad joke, I know. Are you ready for the biggest dad joke? You can make a joke that isn't that funny if you preface it with it being a dad joke, because it shows you have a meta-level social awareness of what's currently happening. Because it's cringe when you believe a joke is funny that isn't actually funny. But if you make a joke that you know isn't that funny, and you tell her that it's a dad joke, then it's actually kind of funny. Or you make a joke and you actually genuinely just laugh about it so hard, don't put it on. But it actually just makes you laugh. She will laugh because of the confidence that you demonstrate and the utter willingness you're exhibiting to try to impress her. Now, push-pull basically means you give her a compliment and a tease at the same time. A positive emotional spike and a negative emotional spike. Because remember, the purpose on the date later in the stages is to create emotions, not just bore her to death. And one of the ways to do that is to say, hey, I like your hair.
Thank you.
Is it real? Aw.
It's a wig.
It's a wig. I like your outfit, one of those shoes. Or for example, another one that's really good is you make fun of her, or for whatever reason, and then she's like, and then you say, come here. Just like, she said something that you didn't like, yeah, I hate you. It's okay. It's a bit of a joke. Obviously, that's a joke. And remember, for those people who think that that's crazy, what would you do with your siblings, right? Sometimes it makes sense. Not always, obviously, be calibrated and respectful. Sometimes it makes sense to talk to her the way you would to your sister, if you had one. A degree of comfort. You assume comfort. You assume that you already know one another. Now, that doesn't mean that I can just do anything that's inappropriate. Always read her signals, always be calibrated. The second you receive any negative signal that she's uncomfortable, you back off. By the way, if you ever say anything that makes her feel uncomfortable, or you make a joke that wasn't appropriate, the first best way to handle that is say, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. That's the first way. Now, if what you said really crossed the line, she was unhappy, then you say, look, I'm genuinely sorry, that wasn't okay. And that usually fixes it. Don't create drama. Don't start questioning yourself. Don't become insecure. First say, just kidding. You would not believe how much comfort you can build and how much you can recalibrate with just saying, just kidding. Or if it's really too much, you can say, hey, look, didn't mean that. Apologize. Yeah. Or if she then totally overreacts, you can say, hey, I didn't mean that. Are we good? Can we talk like adults now? So you always want to make sure you're calibrated. So if you really do cross a line, unintentionally so, then you calibrate it with these two ways. They're actually pretty genius. Teasing is a very, very powerful tool. You have to use it. Don't overdo it, because anything overdone is going to make you come across as insecure. Talking about dating or adventures or intimacy-related subjects. If you're talking about sex, you're not far from having sex. It's true. Now, please, for the love of God, don't overdo this. You're a man who's looking for a serious, meaningful, long-term relationship. For a wife, or at least a long-term girlfriend. It is not your aim to have sex on the first date. Really doesn't have to happen. It can, nothing wrong with it, but it's usually going to happen on the first, second, or third date, unless you're so religious that you don't want to have sex before marriage. That's a different story, no problem at all, but it's a completely different target audience. I've also had clients, we've been able to help them as well. It's just a different approach. But for most people in the US, or at least in the West, this is the way to go about it. The expectation of her is for sex to occur on the first, second, or third date. Usually latest, maybe a little bit later, fourth, but usually it's first to third, if she's up for it. If you don't move things into that direction, it won't happen. 19 out of 20 women, they won't make that move for you. It's your job as a man to make that offer. You just communicate an offer. And she always decides how far it goes, but it's your job to communicate it. So one of the best ways to get there is to be able to talk about it. Now, you have to be calibrating, you don't have to overdo it, but a little bit about it. Remember, all women have two parts in them, the princess and the troublemaker. You're going to get whichever one you elicit. The same woman that's going to have a boring platonic conversation with you is going to be on a different date with another man talking about very different things. Trust me. The same woman that's going to make you wait for 7 dates is going to get busy with some other guy on the first or second one. Because he communicates differently, because he sets a different frame. The expectation of intimacy is clearly communicated, the expectation. That doesn't mean that it's pressure. It's just like, yeah, of course it's going to happen. It's the most natural thing in the world. And if you bring that vibe, that not the whole date is focused around these things, but can you talk about it for a couple of minutes? Not sex itself, but adventures. Have you tried drugs in the past? Hopefully you're not doing any more. And not virtue signaling, it's just bad for your brain and reduces your energy. What adventures have you had in the last year? If you move things in those directions, then she realizes, oh, this is a man who's okay with his sexuality. If you can't even talk about it, what is supposed to make her believe that you'll be able to fulfill her needs? Non-verbal ways to build a man-to-woman connection, in other words, to make things flirtatious. Number one, eye contact. You have to be able to hold relaxed and steady eye contact. If I'm looking at her for 15 seconds and I don't look like a complete idiot while doing so, relaxed, and I allow myself to feel the tension that it creates, she's gonna feel things. Because you can't even do that. Maybe you can, but you're being awkward about it. I recommend that you pay attention to relaxed and steady eye contact. By the way, one of the fastest ways, one of the fastest hacks to come across as more confident is to simply steady your gaze, to not look around a lot. Steady your gaze, look straight. Don't pull your eyelids back. And with her, obviously, you want to have a bit of a gentle smile while doing it. Not supposed to be serious, but just hold it. Enjoy it. Obviously, while you're talking, usually there won't be the silence. But I might be telling her all kinds of things. I like the red dress.
Thank you.
De nada. And something happens. Obviously, at some point, you have to strategically break it. You can't do that for 3 minutes. That gets creepy as hell. But eye contact is one of the most important nonverbal tools to build a man-to-woman connection. Number two, physical touch. You have to be extremely calibrated and respectful and read her signals. When you touch her, you're always going to receive one of 3 signals, a positive, a neutral, or a negative. I would start with really non-invasive ways. So for example, you're on a date, 5-10 minutes in, and she says something you like, and you say, hey, that's awesome. Fist bump. That was a very neutral to positive reaction. Now, if I were to receive a negative here, just pull back a little bit and be uncomfortable with a fist bump. See that? See that hesitation in her face? She's not very impressed. That is a negative signal. It means I create a little bit more physical space and I move back and I don't do this again. And I may wait 15 or 20 minutes to then maybe initiate a high five. If I then initiate a high five and I've built enough comfort and reassurance and trust and connection and rapport through my verbals that I then receive a positive, cool. Oh, that is a positive. Like she's almost interlocking it. That's really good. But even just like neutral, that's already good. But if she pulls back a little bit, yeah, that's very hesitant. That's what you have to read. Another one that's really good is, let's say you're talking to her about, remember when we were talking about jiu-jitsu? Mm-hmm. You saw this? The outside of her arm, or if you were to touch her leg, the outside, not the inside, because you're not there yet. So you want to build it gradually. If I do this and she doesn't move away and she smiles, that's a neutral or a positive signal. But move away very gently. Yeah, you see that you see how the eyelids shut down? Protective body language. If you get these signals, back off, create space instantaneously. But if you don't, that's fantastic. Then you can take her hand, you can play the palm reading game. We talked about that in the last video. Maybe you can give her a hug. Ah, come here. It's cool. For example, you make fun of her and then you console her a little bit. Then you can touch her. One important thing when it comes to physical contact, you don't have to overdo it. Theoretically, you cannot touch her at all throughout the date and then still kiss her after 60, 90, or 120 minutes and then still theoretically go home together. Again, you don't have to go home together on the first date. It can happen on the second or third date. It doesn't matter, but it's possible. So don't put this pressure on yourself. Oh, I didn't touch her enough. How much did we touch during our first date? It was a little bit, but it wasn't like a crazy amount, was it?
No, I think it was more like arms, shoulders.
It was like a little bit because we were sitting next to each other, not opposite of each other. We were in a pub and sat next to one another, and yeah. Now, granted, in our case, we also met in a pub a couple of days before. And then we kissed half an hour after meeting, so that was already established. But it doesn't make a difference. So do build physical touch, but don't feel this pressure that, oh, I haven't touched her enough. Please don't be weird about it. Just be cool. Make it seem natural and smooth. Be like, oh, by the way, that's really cool. I really like that. And then you are allowed to do this before you go for the kiss. You're like, hey, I really like your hair.
Thank you.
And then you can just go in. And then obviously, she's gonna kiss you. If she likes you. If she doesn't, she's gonna back out. And that's something we talked about in one of the other videos. Physical touch is important, but you don't have to overdo it. And if you want me to help you personally to find the right woman for a long-term relationship or for marriage,
Apply for a free initial consultation call.
well done. Good job. Do it!